peace, leaning in my doubts, in my failures. You won't walk out. Your great love will lead me through. You are the peace in my troubled sea. Oh, oh, you are the peace in my troubled sea. And in the silence you won't let go. In the questions your truth will hold. Your great love will lead us through. You are the peace in my troubled sea. Oh, oh, you are the peace in my troubled sea. My lighthouse, shining in the darkness, I will follow you. Oh, my lighthouse, I will trust the promise that you will carry me safe to shore. Safe to shore. Safe to shore. Safe to shore. And I won't fear what tomorrow brings. With each morning I'll rise and sing. My God's love will lead us through. You are the peace in my troubled sea. Whoa, oh, you are the peace in my troubled sea. You're my lighthouse, shining in the darkness. I will follow you. Oh, my lighthouse, I will trust the promise that you will carry me shore. Safe to shore. You're my lighthouse, shining in the darkness. I will follow you. My lighthouse, I will trust the promise you will carry me shore. Safe to shore. This is my prayer in the desert, when all that's within me feels dry. This is my prayer in my hunger and need. My God is the God who provides. And this is my prayer in the fire, in weakness or trial or pain. 'Cause there is a faith proved of more worth than gold. So refine me, Lord, through the flame. I will bring praise, I will bring praise. No weapon formed against me shall remain. I will rejoice, I will declare, God is my victory and He is here. And this is my prayer in the battle, when triumph is still on its way. I am a conqueror and co-heir with Christ, so firm on his promise I'll stand. I will bring praise, I will bring praise. No weapon formed against me shall remain. I will rejoice, I will declare, God is my victory and he is here. All of my life, in every season, you are still God. I have a reason to sing. I have a reason to worship. Oh, all of my life, in every season, you are still God. I have a reason to sing. I have a reason to worship. Yeah. All of my life, in every season, you are still God. I have a reason to sing. I have a reason to worship. So I will bring praise, I will bring praise. No weapon formed against me shall remain. I will rejoice, I will declare, God is my victory and he is here. And this is my prayer in the harvest, when favor and providence flow. I know I'm filled to be emptied again. The seed I've received I will sow. All of my life, in every season, you are still God. And I have a reason to sing. I have a reason to worship. Here I am, down on my knees again, surrendering all, surrendering all. And find me here, Lord, as you draw me near. I'm desperate for you. I'm desperate for you. Drench my soul as mercy and grace unfold. I hunger and thirst. I hunger and thirst. Oh yeah. With arms stretched wide, I know you hear my cry. So speak to me now. Oh, speak to me now. I surrender. I surrender. I want to know you more. I want to know you more. I surrender. I surrender. I want to know you more. I want to know you more. Like a rushing, Jesus, breathe within. Lord, have your way. Lord, have your way in me. Like a mighty storm, stir within my soul. Lord, have your way. Lord, have your way in me. Oh, Come and breathe within. Lord, have your way. Lord, have your way in us. Oh,
Awesome. Thanks everyone for joining us this morning. We're continuing our series where we're looking at the way of Jesus as it relates to us as people and humanity and different things about humanity. And we're interviewing someone. So this morning we're interviewing my friend Andrew Hansen. So welcome, Andrew. Great to
Thanks for
have you.
having me.
And why don't you just start off by just telling us you're married to Jessica, I know, but why don't you just tell us a little bit of the dynamics of your family and
For sure. So yeah, married for actually next week 15 years. So
nice.
been at it for a while. We have three boys just like you. Ours are a little younger, so 11, 9, and 6. So busy, crazy household, especially post or during quarantine. So
Yes.
fun
And
times. And actually, I used to work with you, years ago. You're the reason that brought me to Edmonton. So
it feels like a lifetime ago when we were youth pastoring together.
yeah, it was
So,
it was amazing, but fun times, good times.
so it's a good transition. So as far as ministry, what are you doing now these days?
Yeah, I worked in church ministry for 6 years, and then I kind of made a transition into nonprofit world, so Christian nonprofit. So I worked with Youth Unlimited for about 4 years, planting youth centers, and now just recently have started our own organization called Youth Rise, and it came out of just, I think, me during our time, even when we were at the church together, just seeing so much brokenness and so much need amongst youth, even in Millwoods in our area. And so it kind of caused me to just, yeah, reevaluate a lot of things in my life, and to see like there was a gap essentially where a lot of these kids weren't being reached, and they didn't have a clue. They could care less about who Jesus was. And so I wanted to kind of yeah, create an avenue that would directly go to them and invest all my time into them. And so that's the evolution turned into us starting our own organization, and we're running now, and it's really exciting. And running through a pandemic is not fun when you first start an organization, but God has been so good. So we're excited to just make a difference in our whole city. So
Nice, awesome. So we wanted to talk about this really generic topic of love, but yet is so every human being wants to have that with somebody else at some level. So what does, like, you love your wife, you love your kids, you love a lot of things, but what does that look like, loving someone else?
yeah, so I guess the word I kind of came up with is, how about this? It's inconvenient. Love someone. I don't mean that in a negative way.
I was
Love
gonna
is
say,
so,
hopefully Jessica doesn't watch this.
but what I want to say is this, because I think that as human beings, we are incredibly selfish. I think that that's our natural. We just have that natural inclination to be selfish, and so when we always kind of choose this path of, I think, least resistance. That's just our natural nature. And so when it comes to our relationships and love, I think that so often is something we have to fight against. So when, like, for instance, you're engaged, you're about to be married, and you probably remember these days, it's like the feelings, you get all the butterflies, and you imagine what a life together would look like. Oh, it's just going to be so easy and so awesome, we get to live together. And then reality kind of hits you in the face when you're living with someone, and day in, day out, your choices affect things. And so marriage is, and love in a marriage relationship is sacrifice every single day. And then you have kids, right? And your natural inclination is, I don't want to get up 4 times in the middle of the night when you have young kids, to
Yeah.
change poopy diapers and to feed my kid. And so you don't want that. Your natural inclination is to have comfort and to have the path of least resistance. So what I think, love, when you're loving your kids, even now when they're teenagers, when they're adults, it's sacrifice. It's daily sacrifice, and it's a two-way relationship. It's sacrifice on both sides. And so I think that I came out with maybe like three, I don't know, words that I thought of what love kind of is. And I think the first one would be, love is lived out. So you can't just say, I love, oh, because that word has been kind of neutered in our society. Or you just talk
Yeah.
about, you love, oh, I love pizza so much. I love whatever. I love sports. It's almost been neutered in a sense. So you can say all you want that you love someone, but love has to be applied and has to be lived out. I think that that's one part. So that's number one. I think number two is love is sacrificial. So again, like I talked about, you're like dying to yourself, sometimes to your to your wants, to your needs. It's sacrificing, and not just in wife and your kids, in other relationships with friends and with coworkers. And then the other thing is love. The third part would be love is initiates. So love, you don't wait for someone to love you first until you initiate. I think that's the marker of Christian love. You don't wait, you initiate. So I can even think of like working in this field of, caring for marginalized youth, for example. There is so much of, you don't do it to get patted on the back. I mean, same as you and anyone who does work with caring for people. You don't do it to get reciprocation, and sometimes it's really inconvenient. But that's you. Convenience doesn't drive you. So I think even yesterday, I just thought of this. I'm like, I'm going out for lunch with this young man who I've been mentoring kind of over the years, and so we, at this time, it's waiting 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes passes, and then I get a text. Oh, can you pick me up? And I'm like, can I pick you up? I've been here for 15 minutes. And so you have that almost that choice in that moment to be like, what's my response going to be? I could feel slighted. I could be angry. I ended up just being like, his reality is a little different than my reality. And so I just went and picked him up. We had one of the most deep conversations that we've ever had. And so sometimes you experience that. So love is lived out in action. It's sacrificial. It's initiative. And it's kind of I think the mark of Christian discipleship, actually. I don't know, you do a ton of weddings, hey?
Yeah, less so these days, but yeah, I have done a lot of weddings.
And so you get that every wedding almost that I've ever been to is the love, right? Love is ... But I think love is really, it's the marker of Christian discipleship. You talk about, Paul talks about, if you speak in tongues, right? You're just a gong if you don't have love. If you give to the poor and you don't have love. So love is the marker, I think, that binds us together as Christians. It's the mark of what a disciple of Christ is to have love, to sacrifice, to live it out, to initiate when people aren't asking for it, or they're not being nice to you, or they're not, so I think that's kind of, to me, what it means to love someone.
I like that, because I've often heard of just, love's an action, or love is a verb. And that idea of sacrificial love, it's very, New Testament, we hear that all the time. But the initiative part, because I find so often in our society, people sit there and like, why isn't anybody loving me? Where it's like, no, you take the initiative, you step first, you be the first. No, that's good. Now, Jesus, he often says these things that make us really uncomfortable and are difficult. We often don't talk about them because we want to ignore that part of Jesus. But when Jesus was talking about love once, he was like, you've heard it said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say, love your neighbor and love your enemy. Like what in the world is that all about? This idea of loving our enemy, like loving my wife and my kids. I can see how that can be at times, there's some, difficulty there.
And the people that think like you and dress like you, and that's easy, right?
Yeah, it's easier. There's still those moments of, awkward or tension, but overall it's way more easier than harder. Loving my enemy, not that I want to like defeat my enemy. I just want to ignore them. I want to like have nothing to do with them. I would prefer if they just kind of, the people that bother me, I just prefer if they kind of stayed, on their side of the street and I stayed on mine, and we just didn't interact. That would be easier.
Mm-hmm.
So what does this mean when Jesus says, no, you got to love your enemy?
Yeah, I think first of all, maybe defining what even enemy is. I think what our natural maybe inclination when we hear that from Jesus is to think of the most nefarious thing we could possibly think of. So we think of, is Hitler our enemy? Would he have been our enemy? Yeah, of course. That was horrible. Hitler would for sure classify as an enemy of the church, an enemy of people living there in that time. We think about, if someone breaks into my house to like steal, hold me at gunpoint, someone breaks in my house or someone attacks me on the street. That's your enemy, of course. But so often I think we attribute in, I don't know, our interpretation when we just read that passage at face value, we think of all those things. What would I do if ... What would I do? How do I love my enemy when it's something so significant? I don't even really want to talk about that because that's a whole nother conversation, talking about pacifism and Christians' response to that. I think I want to maybe go in a different direction, which is, what if you think of your enemy as something like maybe just slightly more contextual for what we experience. So your enemy could be a friend or someone who slights you. They slight you and you feel slighted. Someone who has disrespected you in front of other people, right? Someone who's maybe they've cheated you out of a bunch of money, so they stole from you. What about someone who posts wildly different ideological viewpoints on social media and attacks you? I mean, the comment section of social media is a cesspool, right? And somehow, you feel attacked. So our natural inclination with these things, I think, as sinful humans, is to react, right? We want to react with not only equal force, but we want to react with greater force, I think. And that's such a danger. So someone slights you, what do you want to do? Your natural inclination, I want to slight you even more. Someone cheats you out of money, man, I want you to pay. I want you to suffer. Someone disrespects you in front of others, well, guess what? I'm going to find an opportunity to shame you, so that you feel what I felt times 10. So, and the thing is, like, someone posts on social media and attacks you, what do you want to do? Oh, I'm going to show them. I'm going to express my ideology and down their ideology, and I'm going to show them and make them feel dumb, and then they might, like, just crazy stuff. But these are regular things, and our natural inclination is to do that. And I think there's this story I had even of that happened to me. So my son, again, going back to young kids, my kid Declan was he's 9 now, so he was just a baby. So it was winter time. I'm woken up again by sleeping baby, as all parents know. So I can't sleep, so I go downstairs. I'm just sitting in my living room, and then it's winter, it's cold, it's probably December. I hear this do on my front porch. I'm like, what the heck is going on? And then I hear this kind of sound like, shh. And so I run outside because I'm like, what is going on? And I see this teenager running, like a 15, 16-year-old kid running with my Christmas lights. He'd ripped off he ripped off my Christmas lights. And I'm in a t-shirt and my underwear and no socks. And I start running after him. And then I kind of was like, well, it's like minus 15. I probably should go back to the house. But I'd go and jump in my car and I start driving around the neighborhood because I'm so enraged and I feel so violated. Like, how could you walk up to my house and steal my lights? And so I'm so angry. And then I started to calm down. Obviously, I went back to the house, and then I'm thinking to myself, what would have happened if I would have caught this kid? I probably would have tackled him to the ground. And in my moment of rage, I could have punched the kid. I could have got charged.
In your underwear.
In my underwear. And all for what? Because he took some, $30 lights off my house, which is very annoying, mind you. And people, it doesn't mean that you just let people walk on you, but at the same time, I'm like, I wanted to respond with greater force. That was it. That was my natural inclination. I wanted to punch this kid, be like, how dumb are you? But yeah. It's interesting, just one highlight, but what Jesus kind of calls us to do in the New Testament is, in all of his teachings, he flips that whole thing around, right? Our selfishness, it gets kind of turned on its head, and to take these natural sinful inclinations and turn them upside down. So yeah, that verse you read, I think is Matthew 5. You've heard it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. I tell you, love your enemies, pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven. He causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Not even even the tax collectors do that. And if you greet only your own people, what are you doing more than others? Do not even pagans do that? Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect. So he takes this reality and really flips it on its head. And I think ultimately when we talk about loving our enemies and those who have harmed us or hurt us, I think the ultimate antidote to that is just forgiveness. And that's a mark of Christian love, is forgiveness. And it's so ingrained in who we are as people. And that's the antidote, I think, for all of this. Otherwise, toxicity builds up, your propensity to react and hurt builds up, and you just get kind of stopped in your tracks, really, because someone harmed you or an enemy harmed you, whereas you have this opportunity. So even Jesus on the cross, as he's being butchered by people, is yelling out, forgive them, they don't know what they're doing. Even Stephen, one of the early apostles, gets stoned to death, and even Stephen says, Lord, do not hold this sin against them. Like, crazy, right?
Yeah, I forget where I read this, but I've quoted it often, but it's the line was, unforgiveness is the poison we drink hoping it hurts the other person. In other words, when we don't forgive, like, all it does is hurt us. It doesn't affect the other person. And so it poison, like you said, it becomes toxic for us. So if, as a community, as an individual, if we practice this, we're praying for those that are opposed to us, we're loving those that are against us. What's the fruit? What's the outcome of that? What do you think would be kind of the trickle down effect of what would happen from that kind of posturing?
Yeah, I mean, good things. Jesus, the context, I think that the people in the time of Jesus who were hearing this stuff for the first time was I'm reading through the history books right now. I'm just going through them. My goodness, is it ever marked with just brutal, like, ramifications. Someone does something to a king and they bring their whole family out and they slaughter them because of the sin, just crazy stuff. And that was the reality in that world, in that era. These people understand that, yeah, an eye for an eye, absolutely, a tooth for a tooth. They understood it probably in a lot deeper way that we in our culture understand it. And so Jesus comes and says these things. They were absolutely revolutionary. And so what ends up happening, because I mean, Israel was marked by war. They'd have someone would attack someone, they'd kill someone, and it just creates this cycle of like brokenness, right? And we see it in our day. Someone, it just creates such brokenness. And so I think ultimately the reason why Jesus would say these things, I think, is ultimately to change us, number one. To allow us, like, we're dealing with our own selves and our own sinful natures, our own desires to react and respond and hurt, and allows us to instead to love and to allow forgiveness to take place of that. So it starts with ourselves, and then it'll spread to society. And I think, like, today especially, I can see so much vitriol and so much hatred just amongst ideology, right? And there's no room for understanding where a person comes from or why they think the way they think. So I think that what it really would do is, if you're slow to react and respond, then you can actually try to understand the person and try to understand why they are the way they are. There's a reason why uh, everyone does what they do, and it often is if it's negative stuff, it's often caused by some sort of trauma or hurt in their past. And so by loving others who don't think like you, who don't look like you, who say mean things to you, who want to harm you, I think that it's you get an appreciation kind of who they are and why they think the way they think. And I think ultimately so much future conflict can be avoided, because it really starts sometimes with like a domino effect, and you see it's like a wildfire. You're throwing gas on a fire when you respond in harsh ways or negative ways to your enemies.
Yeah.
It's like an uncontrollable fire that can't be put out.
Yeah. So we've talked other times, and we just find you see, especially on social media, a lot of these, interactions between people. It's about winning an argument, winning a fight, being on top and putting others under. But this way of Jesus is turning that on its head, and it's like, no, like, don't be a doormat, but you're called to love. So can you just, those 3 points you talked about, what love looks like? I think that's great for whether it's someone opposed to you or doesn't like you, what we classify maybe as an enemy, or whether it's somebody that your family or your best friend or something. Like, I think those 3 points, it doesn't matter who the person is, they're equally applicable to everybody we interact with. So can you just kind of highlight that again for us?
For sure. Yeah, the levels of intimacy are going to be heightened for sure with all these things, right? Your interaction with your wife, that's the most intimate relationship, a spouse and spouse, that you could ever have. So it's going to be heightened, but the same rule applies, I think, across the board. So when you love someone, you have to live it out. I think there has to be actions involved, right? Again, you could imagine you saying to Evie, I love you, I love you, I love you, and you never are, contributing in any way to the relationship. It's a one-way street. That's so toxic. And so it's lived out. Absolutely. It's sacrificial, in the sense that you're going to need to sacrifice some of your own comforts, some of your own desires, even some of your own natural tendencies to just take the path of least resistance. You sacrifice, and sometimes it's not fun, it's inconvenient, honestly. It sometimes is, it's messy. And then the other thing is it's initiative. So I think that as Christians, again, our job and our call is to initiate, especially to those who aren't deserving of love by society standards. People who that was the mark of Jesus, right? He got so much flack at the time for engaging in people who, quite frankly, people thought they didn't deserve to be loved, they didn't deserve to be cared for. We're talking about prostitutes and Pharisees, and you can take those interpretations to our context and apply it to whole different groups of people. And there's that's what Jesus would do. He initiated. It was incarnational. He went. And so I think that that's something we're called to do. And that trickles down all those things, again, from marriage to with your kids, with your parents, with everywhere down to like just the person you see on the street that might be struggling. Or I think those things are important. And this is not well thought out, peer reviewed research or gospel truth. These are just some thoughts I had roaming through my head.
No, they're great. It's these things are simple but not easy, which I find a lot of Jesus' teaching is. It's simple, it's understandable, but to put it into practice is not easy. So thanks so much for taking a few minutes to share with us. And all you that are watching, if you got any questions, prayer requests, just even a comment, feel free to put that in the comment section, and we'll, especially if there are questions or prayer requests, we will interact with you on those. But everybody, thank you for joining us, and hopefully you can take some from this and love others well, which is the mark really of a follower of Jesus. So thanks again, Andrew, for sharing
Awesome.
with us.
Thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Take care, everyone.
Good morning, City South Church. Thank you for joining us on this wonderful Sunday morning. Hope you're enjoying this beautiful weather that we've been having and that it continues. Just a couple of announcements I wanted to bring to your attention. Our next Church in the Park will be August 23rd. So if that's something you're interested in, we'll be again meeting at the North Millburn Community League at 10 a.m. So if you want to join us there, make sure you bring a lawn chair and we'll be able to see you out there. Also with kids and youth, we are still continuing to do our little visitations. So if that's something you at all are interested in, you want to book a time or you want to contact us at all about that or get some more information, you can email myself as matt@citysouthchurch.com, or you can email Carolyn at citysouthchurch.com for kids. Lastly, I just wanted to thank you guys for your tithes and offering during this time. If giving something at all that you're interested in starting to do, tithing is just something that helps us along the way as well, bringing the gospel to you and just bringing you church online in general, or just continue to produce it for you. You can go on to our website, that's www.citysouthchurch.com, and then there's a gift tab there. So you can click that, it'll give you some more direction. Other than that, I want to wish you a happy Sunday, and it looks like the weather's going to be beautiful today, so hopefully you can get outside, and we'll see you back here online next week, and looking forward to seeing you on the 23rd. Have a good week.